Hello everyone. Naruto Fix here, back with another amazing What If Naruto fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto's journey created multiple love stories at once? Part 1. If you enjoy Naruto stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the journey grow. Now let's head right into today's fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki had always believed his journey was about becoming strong enough to protect everyone. He never imagined that along the way, his heart would become a place where many stories quietly began. After the war, Konoha no longer echoed with alarms or explosions. Instead, it breathed, slowly, cautiously, as if the village itself was learning how to live again. Buildings were repaired, roads rebuilt, but the people carried invisible fractures. Pain didn't vanish just because peace arrived. It simply changed its shape. Naruto walked through the village every day, unaware that he had become something more than a hero. He had become a constant. Naruto's strength was obvious to everyone. His power, his chakra, his reputation as the one who stood against impossible odds. Those things were legendary. But what people noticed now was something quieter. He stayed. He stayed when celebrations ended. He stayed when laughter faded. He stayed when people talked about things that hurt. Naruto listened without impatience, encouraged without demanding gratitude, and helped without expecting acknowledgement. He treated people the same whether they admired him or not. And slowly, that consistency began to touch hearts in ways Naruto never expected. Hinata Hyuga felt it first. Not because her feelings were new, but because Naruto himself had changed. He was no longer the distant figure she admired from afar. He was present, calm, and attentive in a way that made her feel seen rather than inspired. When they trained together, Naruto didn't guide her every move. He trusted her instincts. When she spoke, he waited. When she hesitated, he didn't rush her. Hinata realized one evening that Naruto didn't make her feel brave anymore. He made her feel safe. And safety allowed emotions to deepen without fear. Sakura Haruno's feelings grew from a different place. Once, Naruto had been someone she relied on without truly understanding. Now, she saw him clearly. He respected her decisions, supported her leadership, and never questioned her strength. He stood beside her as an equal, not as someone seeking approval. After long nights at the hospital, Naruto often stayed, helping silently. Sakura noticed how he never tried to fix her exhaustion with jokes anymore. He simply sat with her, understanding that sometimes companionship mattered more than comfort. That quiet support slowly transformed into something heavier. Something she hadn't prepared herself to feel again. Temari of the Sand observed Naruto with sharp awareness. She respected strength, but she respected restraint even more. Naruto never challenged her authority or tried to dominate conversations. He listened, argued honestly when needed, and backed down when he was wrong. With Naruto, Temari felt no need to sharpen her words or guard her pride. He treated her as an equal without trying to impress her. That kind of respect was rare. And rare things had a way of becoming important. Ino Yamanaka experienced Naruto's impact differently. She was used to attention, used to charm, used to people reacting loudly to her presence. Naruto didn't. He listened instead. He remembered small details, took her emotions seriously, and never dismissed her words as trivial. One day, Ino realized that Naruto was the first person who made her feel understood without trying to claim her attention. That realization unsettled her, because understanding carried weight. Naruto, meanwhile, remained unaware of the quiet changes happening around him. To him, these were just bonds, connections forged through hardship, trust, and shared recovery. He believed kindness was simple. You gave it because the world needed more of it. He didn't realize that kindness, when paired with strength and consistency, could turn into something else entirely. The first time Naruto sensed that something had changed was not through a confession. It was through silence. Hinata lingering instead of leaving. Sakura pausing as if wanting to say something more. Temari watching him thoughtfully instead of speaking. Ino studying him with an expression she hadn't worn before. Naruto felt it then. A subtle shift, like standing in the middle of intersecting paths. Something had begun. Not one love story, but several. Standing alone under the quiet sky, Naruto frowned. I didn't plan for this, he thought. But journeys were never just about destinations. They were about the people you changed along the way. Naruto Uzumaki had set out to become strong enough to protect the world. He never realized that in doing so, he would create multiple love stories, each born from a different part of who he was. And this time, strength alone would not be enough. Because this was not a battle. It was a responsibility. Naruto did not notice the change immediately. Change, after all, rarely announced itself. It slipped in quietly, between moments that felt ordinary, disguising itself as routine. Naruto still trained every morning, still helped with missions, still laughed with the same warmth. On the surface, nothing was different. But beneath that surface, emotions were rearranging themselves. The village had begun to lean into peace, and with peace came reflection. People were no longer defined by what they fought against, but by what they chose to hold close. Naruto found himself at the center of that shift, not as a leader giving orders, but as a presence people gravitated toward when things felt uncertain. He didn't command attention. He earned it. Hinata trained with Naruto more often now, not because she needed guidance, but because the space beside him felt steady. Naruto noticed that she no longer flinched when he corrected her stance or commented on her progress. She accepted his words without hesitation, confident in her own ability. One afternoon, after training ended, Hinata didn't leave immediately. She stood beside him, breathing slowly, gaze fixed ahead. You don't look at me like I'm fragile, she said softly. Naruto blinked. You never were. Hinata smiled. Not shyly, not nervously, but with quiet certainty. That smile stayed with Naruto longer than he expected. Sakura's connection to Naruto deepened through shared responsibility. They handled complex situations together. Medical decisions, village planning, moments where leadership weighed heavily. Naruto never second-guessed Sakura in front of others. He trusted her openly, even when choices were difficult. Late one night, as they finished organizing supplies, Sakura spoke quietly. You don't try to protect me from pressure anymore. Naruto looked at her. You don't need that. Sakura nodded. No, I don't. But knowing you trust me enough not to, that matters. Naruto felt the truth of her words settle. What Sakura felt wasn't longing. It was respect that had grown into something warmer. Temari's interactions with Naruto were fewer, but sharper. When she visited Konoha for diplomatic matters, Naruto noticed how easily their conversations cut through formality. There was no hesitation, no emotional haze, just honest exchange between two people who understood strength. You're different from most leaders, Temari said once. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How? You don't use influence unless it's necessary, she replied. You don't enjoy being needed. Naruto considered that. I just don't want people to depend on me instead of themselves. Temari studied him for a long moment. That kind of thinking creates loyalty without chains, she said. Naruto didn't know how to respond. But Temari's words lingered. Ino struggled the most with understanding her own feelings. She was used to quick emotions. Intense, expressive, obvious. What she felt around Naruto was none of those things. It was quiet, persistent, difficult to define. One afternoon, she confronted him bluntly. You don't react the way people expect. Naruto tilted his head. Is that bad? Ino shook her head slowly. No. It just means whatever I'm feeling, I can't blame you for it. Quote. Naruto smiled gently. That sounds like honesty. Ino sighed. It is. And that's the problem. She walked away, leaving Naruto with the sense that something important had just been said. Naruto began to feel the weight of it all. Not fear. Responsibility. He understood now that his journey, his growth, his choices, his kindness, had created multiple paths at once. Each bond reflected a different version of him. A different way he had touched someone's life. Hinata reflected his gentleness. Sakura reflected his reliability. Temari reflected his restraint. Ino reflected his emotional awareness. None of these stories were illusions. They were real. Standing alone one evening, Naruto looked out over the village. I can't pretend this is nothing, he thought. But he also knew something else. He did not need to rush. Strong journeys weren't defined by speed. They were defined by intention. Naruto Uzumaki had created multiple love stories without meaning to. Now, he would have to walk forward carefully. Strong not just in power, but in honesty. Because whatever came next would shape more than just his future. It would shape theirs too. Naruto Uzumaki had always believed that strength meant moving forward no matter what stood in your way. For most of his life, strength had been something external: chakra, resilience, willpower, the refusal to surrender. He had trained his body and spirit to endure pain, to push past fear, to stand when others fell. But now, in this quiet aftermath of war, Naruto was learning that there was another kind of strength. One that did not roar. One that did not strike. One that did not announce itself. A strength that existed in restraint, awareness, and responsibility. And it was this strength that was being tested for the first time. The village of Konoha was healing, but healing was not a straight line. Some wounds closed quickly. Others lingered beneath the surface, shaping behavior, emotions, and expectations. Naruto saw it in the way people spoke more softly now, in the way laughter carried an edge of hesitation, as if joy itself needed permission. Naruto became a constant presence in that fragile balance. He did not lead reconstruction efforts loudly. He did not command attention. He worked alongside others, carrying materials, listening, offering help without authority. He remembered names. He remembered stories. He remembered pain. And because he remembered, people remembered him. Hinata Hyuga felt that constancy in a way that unsettled her. Her feelings for Naruto had been shaped over years. Years of distance, admiration, and quiet resolve. But now, Naruto was no longer an ideal she watched from afar. He was present, grounded, and deeply attentive in ways that made her feel like an equal rather than an observer. When they trained together, Naruto didn't hover. He didn't encourage excessively. He trusted her. That trust changed something fundamental inside Hinata. For the first time, her feelings were not rooted in admiration. They were rooted in shared space. One evening, after a long training session, Hinata spoke without rehearsing her words. You don't make me feel like I have to prove myself anymore. Naruto looked at her carefully. You never needed to. Hinata met his gaze steadily. There was no fluster, no retreat. I know, she said. That's why it matters. Quote. Naruto felt something shift inside him. Not confusion, but recognition. Sakura Haruno experienced Naruto's presence differently. Her bond with Naruto was forged through hardship, sharpened by responsibility, and tempered by growth. She had watched him mature from reckless persistence into something steadier and more deliberate. What affected her now was not nostalgia, but reliability. Naruto didn't second-guess her decisions. He didn't shield her from pressure. He trusted her competence openly. Late one night, after they had finished organizing medical resources, Sakura broke the silence. You don't try to lighten things anymore. Naruto glanced at her. Do you want me to? Quote. Sakura shook her head slowly. No, I want you to stay honest. Naruto nodded. Then I'll stay. That simple statement carried more weight than any declaration could have. Sakura realized then that what she felt was not longing. It was something calmer, deeper. Trust that had grown into attachment. Temari of the Sand saw Naruto through the lens of leadership. She had dealt with powerful men before, men who used strength to dominate, charm, or intimidate. Naruto was different. He did not seek authority beyond what was necessary. He did not enjoy influence for its own sake. When they spoke, Naruto listened. When they disagreed, he argued honestly. When he was wrong, he admitted it without hesitation. You don't posture, Temari said once, studying him carefully. Naruto shrugged. Posturing wastes energy. Temari smiled faintly. It also hides insecurity. You don't hide. With Naruto, Temari felt respected without concession. There was no emotional ambiguity, no unspoken expectations. And yet, admiration grew quietly, not because he tried to earn it, but because he never exploited it. Ino Yamanaka found herself unsettled in ways she had never experienced before. She was skilled at reading emotions, skilled at navigating attraction and attention. Naruto disrupted those instincts. He didn't respond to flirtation with escalation or avoidance. He treated her words seriously, even when she masked them with humor. You don't give people something to push against, Ino said once. Naruto smiled faintly. I don't think feelings are arguments to win. Ino stared at him. That was the problem. He wasn't playing a game she knew how to play. Whatever she felt around him belonged to her alone, and that honesty was terrifying. Naruto began to understand the pattern emerging around him. Each connection reflected a different part of who he had become. Hinata reflected his gentleness. Sakura reflected his reliability. Temari reflected his restraint. Ino reflected his emotional awareness. None of these bonds competed. But together, they created a responsibility Naruto could no longer ignore. Late one night, Naruto stood alone beneath the stars. He asked himself the question he had been avoiding. What did he feel? The answer did not come as a list or a conclusion. What came instead was clarity. He felt calm with some people, challenged by others, grounded in certain silences, alert in others. He realized that love was not something that arrived all at once. It was something that aligned. Naruto understood now that his journey had created multiple love stories not because he was careless, but because he was consistent. Because he showed up. Because he stayed. But staying forever in uncertainty would become its own kind of cruelty. He didn't need to decide yet. But he needed to stop pretending nothing was happening. And that realization marked the true turning point of his journey. Not as a hero, but as a man learning how to carry the weight of hearts he never intended to claim. This was no longer a story about power. It was a story about responsibility, awareness, and the courage to eventually choose with honesty. Naruto did not wake up one morning suddenly wiser. Growth did not arrive like a revelation. It arrived quietly, in the way he paused before answering questions now, in the way he noticed the space between words, in the way emotions no longer surprised him but asked to be understood. He had lived most of his life reacting to hatred, to loneliness, to expectations, to war. Peace had removed the noise, and in that silence, Naruto was forced to listen to things he had never learned how to hear before. Feelings. Not his own first, but everyone else's. The village was changing, but Naruto realized something unsettling. People were changing around him. They didn't seek him only for strength anymore. They sought him for grounding. When something felt unstable, when emotions tangled, when memories resurfaced, Naruto became the place where people slowed down. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He didn't try to solve everything. And because of that, people stayed longer than they meant to. Hinata noticed it during one of their evening walks. They weren't walking with a destination in mind. They never did. The paths around Konoha had become familiar enough that direction didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the quiet rhythm of shared movement. Naruto no longer talked just to fill the silence. He matched her pace naturally, his steps unhurried. Hinata realized she wasn't anxious around him anymore, not even in the soft way she once had been. That frightened her more than shyness ever did. Because fear had been replaced by comfort. Do you ever miss the noise? She asked softly. Naruto thought about it. Sometimes. But I like hearing things clearly now. Quote. Hinata nodded. She understood what he meant, even if he hadn't explained it fully. With Naruto, she didn't feel like she had to explain herself either. That was when Hinata realized something crucial. Her feelings were no longer about hope. They were about certainty. Sakura's realization came during exhaustion. There was a kind of tiredness that reached beyond the body, a tiredness that no amount of rest could erase. Sakura felt it often now. Leadership, responsibility, healing others while ignoring herself. It all added up. Naruto noticed. He didn't comment on it directly. He didn't ask her if she was okay every few minutes. Instead, he adjusted. He took over tasks without making a show of it. He stayed late without being asked. He didn't force conversation. One night, Sakura finally spoke. "You're different from how you used to be." Quote. Naruto looked at her. "Better or worse?" "Steadier," she said after a moment. "You don't lean on me when you're unsure. You don't hide behind jokes." Naruto nodded slowly. "I didn't want to make things heavier for you." Quote. Sakura exhaled. "You didn't. You made them clearer." That was when she understood what had changed. Naruto didn't need her. He chose to stand beside her. And choice was far more powerful than dependence. Temari's perspective sharpened over time. She observed Naruto in meetings, in negotiations, in moments where authority subtly shifted hands. Naruto never pushed himself forward. He also never stepped back when his voice mattered. That balance impressed her. Strength without ego. Confidence without entitlement. "You know," Temari said once, "people follow you without realizing they're doing it." Naruto frowned slightly. "I don't want that." Quote. Temari studied him. "I know. That's why it happens." With Naruto, Temari felt no need to test dominance or sharpen her words unnecessarily. He met her directly, without challenge or submission. And for someone like Temari, that equality was rare. Dangerously rare. Ino's struggle was internal. She had always understood attraction easily. She recognized patterns, signals, emotional escalation. Naruto didn't follow any of those rules. He didn't flirt back. He didn't withdraw either. He listened and remembered. That was the problem. Naruto remembered things that people usually forgot. He remembered what she said when she was half joking. He remembered moods she tried to laugh away. He remembered silences. "You make people confront themselves," Ino said one afternoon. Naruto tilted his head. "Is that bad?" Ino smiled faintly. "It depends on whether they're ready." She wasn't sure she was. Naruto began to feel the intersections more clearly now. He didn't confuse them for competition, but he could sense the way paths crossed. He noticed how Hinata grew quieter when Sakura was nearby, not from jealousy, but from awareness. He noticed how Temari's gaze lingered longer during discussions, measuring something beyond strategy. He noticed how Ino became more thoughtful, less performative. These weren't accidents. They were reflections. Late one night, Naruto sat alone and finally allowed himself to think without avoidance. Why had this happened? The answer was simple and unsettling. He had stopped asking to be loved. He had stopped needing validation. He had stopped performing strength. What remained was sincerity. And sincerity invited attachment. Naruto understood now that multiple love stories had formed not because he was extraordinary, but because he was present in a way most people were not. He stayed when emotions became inconvenient. He didn't retreat when things grew complicated. But staying forever without choosing would turn presence into ambiguity. And ambiguity, he knew, could hurt more deeply than rejection. He accepted something important. Eventually, he would have to speak. Not with grand declarations. Not with dramatic confessions. But with honesty that respected everyone involved, including himself. Naruto Uzumaki had once believed his journey was about becoming strong enough to protect the world. Now he understood that the hardest part of that journey was learning how to protect hearts, without claiming them, without confusing them, without running from responsibility. And that lesson was far from over. Naruto began to feel the weight of awareness settle into his daily life like a second heartbeat. It wasn't heavy in the way guilt was heavy. It wasn't sharp like fear. It was constant. A quiet understanding that his presence no longer passed through people without leaving something behind. For most of his life, Naruto had been chasing connection. Now, connection was finding him without effort, and that difference changed everything. When you chased something, you didn't worry about the trail you left behind. When something followed you, responsibility demanded you look back. Naruto was finally looking back. Hinata's feelings grew not louder, but deeper. She no longer tried to hide them, yet she did not push them forward either. Naruto noticed how she no longer flinched when their hands brushed during training, how her breathing remained steady even when their eyes met. There was no nervous energy anymore, only acceptance. One evening, as they rested near the training grounds, Hinata spoke without looking at him. You don't feel far away anymore. Naruto frowned slightly. Was I? Hinata nodded. Before, you were always moving towards something. A goal, a promise, a future. Naruto listened carefully. And now? He asked. Now you feel like you're here, she replied softly. That word, here, echoed in Naruto's chest. With Hinata, presence felt natural, unforced, like something that did not need explanation. And that scared him more than intensity ever could. Sakura's realization arrived in a moment of frustration. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and irritated, at paperwork, at decisions, at the weight of responsibility. Naruto noticed the tension in her shoulders long before she said anything. He didn't try to cheer her up. He didn't offer solutions immediately. He simply took a stack of documents from her hands and said, "Take 5 minutes." Sakura stared at him. "I didn't ask for help," she said. Naruto met her gaze calmly. "I know. You didn't need to." That was when something inside Sakura shifted. Naruto wasn't helping because he thought she was weak. He was helping because he saw her. Later, when the frustration faded, Sakura spoke quietly. "You don't make me feel like I owe you anything." Naruto shook his head. "You don't." That was when Sakura realized the difference between reliance and partnership. And that realization mattered more than any old feelings ever had. Temari noticed Naruto's restraint more clearly with each interaction. He never lingered longer than necessary. Never softened his tone to gain approval. Never used charm to steer outcomes. He respected her space the same way he respected her authority. "You don't reach for influence unless it's required," she observed during a discussion. Naruto shrugged. Influence should solve problems, not create dependencies. Temari studied him carefully. "That mindset changes people," she said. Naruto frowned. "I'm not trying to change anyone." Temari smiled faintly. "That's why it works." With Naruto, Temari felt challenged, not emotionally, but ethically. He represented a kind of strength that didn't seek dominance, and that intrigued her more than she cared to admit. Ino found herself quieter than usual. She had always been expressive, open, confident in her emotional intelligence. Naruto disrupted that confidence by refusing to define what she felt for her. He didn't encourage it. He didn't dismiss it. He simply let it exist. "You don't give answers," Ino said once. Naruto replied gently, "Some answers belong to the person asking the question." Ino laughed softly, but there was tension beneath it. She wasn't used to sitting with her feelings without feedback. And Naruto's calm made her confront something real. Naruto began to see how his presence affected the dynamics between others as well. People were more careful with their words around him, not out of fear, but respect. Conversations slowed. Emotions were expressed more thoughtfully. He became a stabilizing force without intending to be one. That realization unsettled him, because stability invited attachment. Late at night, Naruto sat alone, staring up at the sky. He asked himself again what he felt. The answer came more clearly this time. He felt peace in certain silences. He felt strength in certain challenges. He felt understanding in certain conversations. And one connection, quiet, steady, patient, felt less like something forming and more like something had always been there, waiting for him to notice it properly. Naruto didn't name it, but he didn't deny it either. He accepted something that night. Multiple love stories had begun because he had grown into someone who stayed. But staying forever without choosing would turn sincerity into uncertainty. And uncertainty, he knew, could hurt more deeply than honesty ever would. Naruto Uzumaki had faced gods and survived wars. Now he stood before something quieter, more human, and infinitely more delicate. The moment where presence had to become intention. And intention, eventually, would have to become choice. Naruto slowly began to understand that awareness did not bring peace immediately. It brought tension first. Not the kind that exploded outward, but the kind that tightened quietly inside the chest. The tension of knowing that every step forward left an imprint behind. Naruto had lived most of his life reacting instinctively. Now, instinct alone was no longer enough. Thought, restraint, and responsibility had become part of his every movement. And that was exhausting in a way battles never were. He noticed how people paused around him now. Not awkwardly, not fearfully, thoughtfully. Conversations slowed when he joined them. People chose their words more carefully, not because they feared judgment, but because they felt heard. Naruto didn't interrupt. He didn't dominate discussions. He let silence exist until it felt complete. That silence became dangerous, because silence allowed feelings to surface. Hinata sensed Naruto's inner tension even when he said nothing. She had grown more attuned to emotional shifts over the years, her own and others. With Naruto, she noticed the smallest changes. The way his shoulders stiffened when too many emotions crossed paths, the way his gaze lingered when something mattered but went unspoken. One evening, they sat together without training, without walking, just sitting. "You're carrying something," Hinata said softly. Naruto didn't deny it. "I don't want to make mistakes." Hinata folded her hands in her lap. "Not every mistake comes from choosing." Naruto looked at her. "Some come from waiting too long," she added gently. That was not a confession. It was not pressure. It was honesty. And honesty from Hinata always carried weight. Sakura's understanding of Naruto deepened through contrast. She saw how others reacted to him now, the careful pauses, the softened expressions. Sakura recognized the burden that created, because she carried it too in her own role. Late one night, she spoke quietly while organizing medical records. "You're tired in a way you don't talk about." Naruto glanced at her. "I'm not hurt." Sakura shook her head. "That's not what I meant." She turned to face him. "You're thinking about consequences instead of actions. That's new for you." Naruto nodded slowly. "I don't want to hurt people by accident." Sakura studied him for a moment, then said something that surprised him. "You can't protect everyone from feeling something. You can only protect them from being lied to." Naruto felt those words settle deep. With Sakura, truth had always mattered more than comfort. Temari noticed Naruto's restraint as distance, but not coldness. When they met during another diplomatic visit, Naruto remained respectful, focused, and direct. He didn't linger. He didn't shorten conversations either. He ended them when they were complete. "You're careful," Temari observed. Naruto replied honestly, "I don't want to confuse intention." Temari crossed her arms. "Careful people don't confuse others. Indecisive ones do." Naruto didn't respond immediately. Temari wasn't accusing him. She was warning him. And Naruto respected her enough to take that warning seriously. Ino's internal struggle sharpened. She noticed how Naruto interacted differently with each person. Not unfairly, but distinctly. He adjusted naturally, without calculation. That adaptability was part of what made him compelling and unsettling. "You don't treat people the same," Ino said bluntly one afternoon. Naruto smiled faintly. "People aren't the same." Ino exhaled. "That's the problem. You make everyone feel seen." Naruto met her gaze. "Being seen doesn't mean being chosen." Ino swallowed. That was the clearest thing he had said yet. Naruto began to sense the invisible intersections more sharply now. Moments where Hinata grew quieter when Sakura entered a room. Moments where Temari observed rather than spoke. Moments where Ino masked seriousness with humor. These weren't rivalries. They were awareness. And awareness demanded responsibility. Late at night, Naruto finally confronted a truth he could no longer avoid. His journey had created multiple love stories not because he was careless, but because he had grown into someone people trusted emotionally. Someone who did not retreat when things became complicated. But trust, once given, deserved clarity, not silence. Naruto sat beneath the stars, breathing slowly. He did not need to choose tonight. He did not need to speak tomorrow. But he needed to prepare himself for honesty. Not dramatic honesty. Not confessional honesty. Quiet, respectful truth. The kind that acknowledged feelings without exploiting them. Naruto Uzumaki had learned how to carry the hopes of a world. Now he was learning how to carry the weight of individual hearts. And that, he realized, was the most delicate responsibility he had ever faced. Naruto had faced moments where the weight of the world pressed down on his shoulders, but this was different. This weight was quieter. It did not roar like war. It did not threaten destruction. It waited. And waiting, Naruto realized, could be far more demanding than fighting. He began to notice how even small moments carried consequence now. A look held a second too long. A pause left unexplained. A word chosen too gently. These were things Naruto had once done instinctively, without thought. Now, he saw how those moments lingered in people's minds after he walked away. He had become someone whose presence meant something. Sometimes more than he intended. And that knowledge forced him to slow down. Hinata sensed the shift before Naruto ever voiced it. They trained together early in the morning, when the village was still quiet. The air was cool, movements precise. When they stopped, Naruto didn't immediately speak. He stood still, thoughtful. "You're somewhere else," Hinata said gently. Naruto exhaled. "I'm trying to figure out how to do this right." Quote. Hinata didn't ask what this meant. She understood. "You don't have to rush," she said. "But don't disappear either." Naruto met her gaze. With Hinata, words were never wasted. She spoke only when she meant something deeply, and Naruto felt the truth of her words settle into him. She wasn't asking for answers. She was asking for presence. Sakura's understanding deepened through observation. She noticed how Naruto had become more deliberate, how he thought before speaking, how he weighed silence differently. Sakura recognized that change because she had undergone something similar herself when responsibility had forced her to grow. One evening, she said quietly, "You're afraid of being careless." Naruto nodded. "I don't want to hurt people without realizing it." Sakura looked at him steadily. "Then don't confuse kindness with avoidance." That struck him. Sakura continued, "Being careful doesn't mean saying nothing. It means saying the right thing when it matters." Naruto absorbed that without argument. With Sakura, growth had always come through honesty. Temari noticed Naruto's restraint as something sharper than hesitation. During another diplomatic exchange, she observed how Naruto kept his distance. Not emotionally, but intentionally. He neither leaned in nor pulled away. "You're standing on the edge of choice," she said bluntly. Naruto didn't deny it. Temari crossed her arms. "Indecision feels safe, but it builds tension. Tension breaks things." Naruto met her gaze. "And rushing breaks them too." Temari smiled faintly. "That's why this is difficult." Quote. She respected him for acknowledging it. With Temari, Naruto felt challenged to remain grounded. Not swayed by emotion, but not detached from it either. Ino felt the pressure internally. She had always been confident in navigating emotions, but Naruto's calm refused to give her the feedback she was used to. She found herself sitting with feelings longer than she liked, questioning where they came from and what they meant. "You don't resolve things for people," she said once. Naruto replied softly, "Some things shouldn't be resolved by someone else." Quote. Ino laughed quietly, then stopped. That answer lingered. Naruto wasn't rejecting emotions. He was respecting them. Naruto began to recognize the invisible threads connecting these moments. Hinata's quiet certainty. Sakura's grounded honesty. Temari's sharp clarity. Ino's self-reflection. Each bond asked something different of him. And Naruto realized something important. This wasn't about who loved him more. It was about who he became in each connection. Late at night, Naruto finally allowed himself to sit with his own emotions without distraction. He realized that one presence brought him calm without effort. Another challenged him to be better. Another reminded him of balance. Another forced him to confront emotional truth. None of these were accidents. They were reflections of his growth. Naruto accepted a difficult truth. At some point, awareness would no longer be enough. He would need to speak. Not to declare love. Not to choose immediately. But to stop letting silence shape meaning on its own. He would need to offer clarity. Gently, respectfully, and without fear. Naruto Uzumaki had learned to face enemies head on. Now he was learning how to face emotion with the same courage. Naruto Uzumaki had survived moments where the world itself seemed to collapse around him, yet nothing had prepared him for the slow, invisible pressure he felt now. This pressure did not come from enemies or fate or prophecy. It came from something far more human. Expectation. Not spoken aloud. Not demanded. But felt. Everywhere. Naruto had always believed that as long as he acted with a good heart, the path forward would reveal itself. For most of his life, that belief had been enough. Kindness had guided him when strategy failed. Sincerity had opened doors that strength could not. But kindness, he was learning, could also become a crossroads. And crossroads demanded choice. The village had entered a phase of quiet reconstruction. Not just of buildings, but of identity. Shinobi were no longer defined solely by missions and wars. They were rediscovering who they were when survival was no longer the only goal. Naruto walked through this new world like someone learning gravity for the first time. People greeted him warmly, but without awe. They smiled, but didn't cling. They trusted him without needing him to perform. That trust was the most unsettling thing of all. Because trust asked more than admiration ever had. Hinata Hyuga's world had shifted in subtle but permanent ways. Her feelings for Naruto had once been something fragile, carried carefully and hidden out of fear. Over time, they had become stronger, but also quieter. Now, with Naruto standing firmly in the present instead of chasing ideals, Hinata found herself standing beside him rather than behind him. That change mattered. They trained together often, not because either needed it, but because it felt natural. Naruto noticed how Hinata no longer waited for instruction. She adjusted her form confidently, corrected herself without apology, and met his gaze steadily when they spoke. One evening, after a long session, they sat side by side in silence. "You don't look surprised anymore," Hinata said softly. Naruto turned to her. "Surprised by what?" "By me," she replied. Naruto considered that. "I think I finally learned how to see you properly." Hinata's breath caught. Not from shyness, but from truth. That was when she understood that whatever she felt no longer needed to be protected from Naruto. It needed to be respected. Sakura Haruno's connection with Naruto deepened through responsibility rather than emotion. They worked closely now, not as teammates chasing missions, but as leaders shaping the future of the village. Sakura trusted Naruto's judgment implicitly. Naruto trusted Sakura's strength without question. That mutual trust erased the need for emotional validation. One late night, Sakura finally voiced something she had been thinking for a long time. "You don't need me to reassure you anymore." Naruto nodded. "I know who I am now." Sakura smiled faintly. "That makes standing beside you easier." There was no longing in her voice. Only certainty. Sakura realized then that what she felt for Naruto had transformed. It wasn't about romance or possibility. It was about stability. Knowing that someone would stand with her through uncertainty without trying to define it. That kind of bond didn't demand more. It endured. Temari's interactions with Naruto remained sharp, deliberate, and revealing. She respected him not because of his reputation, but because of his restraint. Naruto never tried to dominate discussions, never softened his stance for approval, never crossed boundaries for comfort. "You don't confuse confidence with control," Temari observed once. Naruto replied calmly, "Control fades. Respect doesn't." Temari studied him carefully, seeing something familiar. Someone who understood power without being seduced by it. With Naruto, Temari felt intellectually challenged and emotionally unpressured. He did not ask her to be softer. He did not expect her to compromise herself. That respect bred something dangerous. Not longing. Recognition. Ino Yamanaka's struggle was the most internal of all. She was used to navigating attraction effortlessly. Reading people had always been her strength. Naruto, however, refused to fit into her patterns. He neither invited nor rejected emotion. He acknowledged it without owning it. "You don't give me signals," she said one afternoon. Naruto smiled gently. "I don't want to send the wrong ones." Ino frowned. "And what if there are no right ones?" Naruto considered that. "Then honesty matters more." Ino laughed softly, but the laughter faded quickly. Honesty was easy to admire, hard to sit with. Naruto forced her to confront her feelings without leaning on reaction or reassurance. And that, more than anything, changed how she saw him. Naruto began to recognize how these connections did not clash, but intersected. Each person reflected a different truth about him. Hinata reflected his capacity for quiet understanding. Sakura reflected his reliability and growth. Temari reflected his restraint and respect. Ino reflected his emotional maturity. These were not competing paths. They were mirrors. And Naruto finally understood that his journey had created multiple love stories because he had grown into someone emotion. Ali safe, not emotionally available to everyone, but emotionally present. Presence, he realized, was powerful. Late one night, Naruto sat alone beneath the open sky. He allowed himself to feel without labeling. He felt calm when thinking of certain silences. He felt grounded when recalling certain conversations. He felt challenged when remembering certain debates. And one presence, quiet, steady, patient, felt like something that did not demand resolution. It simply existed. Naruto did not name it yet. But he no longer denied it. He accepted something that night with full clarity. He could not stay in this moment forever. Awareness without action would eventually turn into avoidance. Kindness without clarity would become unintentional harm. Naruto would have to speak. Not to confess. Not to decide immediately. But to stop letting silence write stories on his behalf. Naruto Uzumaki had spent his life proving his strength to the world. Now he was learning that the strongest thing he could do was face emotion with the same courage he once reserved for battle. Naruto Uzumaki was beginning to understand something that no battlefield had ever taught him. Power revealed itself loudly. Emotion revealed itself slowly. And slow revelations were the hardest to face, because they gave you time to think, and thinking invited responsibility. The days passed with deceptive normalcy. Missions were completed, meetings held, training grounds echoed with familiar sounds. Yet beneath that surface, Naruto felt the quiet tightening of threads he could no longer ignore. People didn't ask anything of him. That was the problem. They waited. Naruto noticed how the air subtly shifted when certain people were in the same space. Hinata grew more composed, more grounded, but also more observant. She no longer looked away when emotions surfaced. She didn't press forward either. Her restraint wasn't fear. It was confidence in her own feelings. Sakura carried herself with certainty, yet Naruto sensed how she watched him now. Not with longing, but with careful awareness, as if measuring whether something unfinished still lingered between them. Temari observed everything. Always. Her silence wasn't absence. It was calculation. She weighed situations not for advantage, but for truth. Ino masked her thoughts behind humor less often. She was thinking more, feeling more carefully. Naruto was not imagining these things. He was finally paying attention. One evening, Naruto found himself sitting alone at the edge of the training grounds long after everyone else had left. The sky was painted in muted colors, the world suspended between day and night. That was when Hinata approached, not hurried, not hesitant. She sat beside him without asking. They stayed silent for a long time. Then she spoke. "You look tired in a different way." Naruto smiled faintly. "I think I'm learning." Hinata nodded. "Learning can be exhausting." Naruto glanced at her. Does it ever stop being confusing? Quote, Hinata considered the question seriously. No, but it becomes honest. That answer stayed with him. With Hinata, honesty didn't feel like confrontation. It felt like clarity. Sakura's moment came later that same week. They worked together late into the night, reviewing plans and resources. The work was methodical, quiet, focused. Naruto noticed how naturally they fell into rhythm, finishing each other's thoughts, anticipating needs without words. At one point, Sakura paused and said softly, "You know, we don't circle around things anymore." Naruto looked at her. Is that a bad thing? Sakura shook her head. No, it means we grew past needing to. Quote, she met his eyes, steady and unafraid. What we have now, she continued, doesn't need to become anything else to be real. Naruto felt relief, not loss. Because with Sakura, truth felt settled. Temari's clarity arrived without softness. During a diplomatic visit, she confronted Naruto directly. You're standing still, she said. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I thought patience was growth. Temari crossed her arms. It is. Until it becomes avoidance. Quote, Naruto didn't argue. Temari continued, people don't need answers immediately. But they need to know you see them. Naruto nodded slowly. I do. Temari studied him. Then don't let silence speak louder than intention. Quote, that was Temari's way. Sharp, honest, precise. And Naruto respected her for it. Ino's realization unfolded internally, but she eventually voiced it. You don't belong to confusion, she said one afternoon. You belong to clarity. Naruto smiled faintly. I'm still working on it. Ino sighed. I know. And that's why this is hard. Naruto didn't ask her to explain. He didn't need to. Naruto sat alone that night, finally allowing the truth to settle fully. His journey, his growth, his kindness, his presence, had created multiple love stories not because he promised anything, but because he stayed long enough for feelings to form. And now, staying silently would no longer be neutral. It would be a choice. He accepted something essential. He could not protect everyone from pain. But he could protect them from confusion. He could not avoid every difficult conversation. But he could ensure they were honest. Naruto Uzumaki had spent his life running toward battles. Now he stood still, facing something quieter but far more personal. The moment where awareness demanded courage. Naruto realized that the hardest battles were the ones where no one raised their voice. No clash of steel. No burst of chakra. No clear enemy standing in front of him. Only quiet moments where something could be said, and wasn't. And those moments were piling up. The village moved forward, but Naruto felt as though he was standing in the middle of several roads that had formed without him noticing. Each path was shaped by time, shared silence, and the simple fact that he had stayed when others might have walked away. He began to understand something unsettling. People were not waiting for him to choose them. They were waiting for him to choose honesty. Hinata's presence remained the calmest, and because of that, the most dangerous to ignore. She did not look at Naruto with expectation. She did not ask questions she already knew the answers to. She simply existed beside him, steady and unafraid, as if trusting that whatever was real would reveal itself naturally. One evening, they trained quietly, movements synchronized more by intuition than effort. When they finished, Hinata spoke softly. You don't need to explain yourself to me. Naruto looked at her, surprised. Why not? Hinata met his eyes. Because when you're ready to speak, you will. That trust hit Naruto harder than any confession could have. With Hinata, there was no pressure. Only faith. Sakura's understanding was rooted in realism. She knew Naruto well enough to recognize when he was carrying too much without speaking. She also knew he wouldn't respond well to being pushed. Late one night, she said simply, you don't owe anyone certainty before you understand yourself. Naruto exhaled slowly. But I owe them clarity eventually. Sakura nodded. Yes, eventually. Just don't confuse eventually with never. Quote, that was Sakura. Grounded, honest, unafraid to say what mattered. Naruto trusted her for it. Temari remained sharp, but her sharpness carried respect. She watched Naruto carefully, noticing the way he avoided careless intimacy, the way he chose words deliberately, the way he refused to let anyone misread him easily. "You're not indecisive," she said once. "You're deliberate." Naruto tilted his head. "There's a difference." Temari smirked. "Most people don't know it." With Temari, Naruto felt challenged to remain strong without being rigid. She respected his restraint, but she also knew restraint had limits. And she wasn't wrong. Ino's conflict became quieter, but deeper. She no longer tried to draw reactions from Naruto. She watched instead, listened, thought. Naruto noticed that she spoke more carefully now, not because she was unsure, but because she was being honest with herself. "You don't complete people," she said once. "You make them think." Quote. Naruto smiled faintly. "Is that worse?" Ino shook her head. "No. It's just heavier." Naruto understood that weight. And then there was Naruto himself. For the first time, he allowed himself to stop pretending this was temporary. He accepted that multiple love stories had formed not by accident, but by growth. He had grown into someone emotionally reliable. Someone who did not disappear when things became complicated. But he also understood something else. Remaining silent forever would turn reliability into avoidance. And Naruto refused to be that person. Late at night, standing beneath the open sky, Naruto finally admitted the truth to himself. He felt different things with different people. Some connections felt calm. Some felt grounding. Some felt challenging. But one presence, quiet, patient, unwavering, felt less like something developing and more like something that had always been there, waiting for him to catch up to it. Naruto did not act on that realization yet. But he did not run from it either. He took a slow breath and made a decision. Not about who to choose, but about how he would move forward. He would stop letting silence do the talking. He would stop hiding behind good intentions. He would begin speaking truth carefully, respectfully, and without fear. Not all at once, but soon. Naruto Uzumaki had faced destruction without flinching. Now he faced connection with the same resolve. Naruto Uzumaki had always believed that clarity came from action. You fought. You endured. You won or lost. And in that result, truth revealed itself. But this quiet tension growing inside him, had no clear opponent, no decisive strike. It asked him to sit with uncertainty instead of destroying it. And that was something Naruto had never trained for. The realization did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated. It lived in the way conversations paused when Naruto entered a room. In the way people looked at him, then looked away, then looked back. In the way emotions lingered after moments that should have ended. Naruto understood now that his journey had crossed an invisible threshold. He was no longer just a hero people admired or relied on. He was someone whose presence changed the emotional direction of others. And once that happened, neutrality became impossible. Naruto started to feel the strain of holding back. Not because he wanted to rush forward, but because silence was no longer empty. Silence was interpreted. Every unspoken word became a possibility in someone else's mind. Every pause carried imagined meaning. He had never wanted that. He had never intended that. But intention did not erase impact. Hinata sensed the shift before Naruto articulated it. She always did. There was something about Hinata's perception that went deeper than observation. She didn't just see actions. She felt intention beneath them. Naruto noticed how she never interrupted him when he grew quiet, never filled space with unnecessary words. One evening, they stood together overlooking the village, lights flickering below like distant stars. "You're thinking about endings," Hinata said softly. Naruto turned toward her, surprised. "How did you know?" Hinata didn't smile. She didn't deflect. "Because you don't look afraid," she said. "You look careful." Quote. Naruto exhaled slowly. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he admitted. Hinata nodded. "I know." There was no accusation in her voice. No request. Just understanding. "That's why it hurts," she added quietly. Because you care. Naruto felt something tighten in his chest. Hinata wasn't asking him to choose her. She was asking him not to disappear behind silence. Sakura's perspective came from experience. She had once lived inside emotional uncertainty, had once waited for feelings to change, to return, to transform. She knew the damage indecision could cause, even when unintentional. One late night, as they worked together, Sakura finally spoke what she had been holding back. You don't owe anyone a future, she said. But you owe them truth in the present. Naruto looked at her sharply. Sakura continued, you don't have to decide everything now. But you can't let people build hope on your silence. Naruto nodded slowly. With you, Sakura added, softer now, I know exactly where I stand. And that's why this doesn't hurt. Naruto realized something important in that moment. Clarity didn't end connections. It stabilized them. Temari approached the situation with characteristic bluntness. You're standing too still, she said during a conversation that cut straight through formality. Naruto didn't argue. I'm thinking. Temari crossed her arms. Thinking is fine. Hiding isn't. Naruto met her gaze. I'm not hiding. Temari studied him for a long moment. Good. Because people don't need certainty right away, but they need to know you're not avoiding them. Quote. Her words carried no emotion. Just truth. Naruto respected that. Ino's conflict finally surfaced in honesty. She stopped trying to be light about it. You make people feel important, she said quietly. Individually, not as a group. Naruto listened. That's not a flaw, she continued. But it creates attachment. And attachment needs boundaries. Naruto nodded. I'm learning that. Ino sighed. Good. Because you don't belong to confusion. Quote. That statement carried weight. Naruto didn't belong to confusion. He belonged to truth, even when it was uncomfortable. Naruto finally allowed himself to stop asking why this had happened. The answer was already clear. He had grown into someone emotionally present. Someone consistent. Someone who stayed. And staying changed people. Late that night, Naruto sat alone, the village quiet around him. He asked himself the hardest question yet. What happens if I don't act? The answer came with painful clarity. Silence would not freeze time. It would let stories form without him. It would let people hope, doubt, and hurt quietly. That was not kindness. That was avoidance. Naruto accepted something fundamental. He did not need to choose love tonight. But he did need to choose honesty soon. Not explosive honesty. Not confessional honesty. But grounded, respectful truth. Truth that acknowledged feelings without claiming them. Truth that clarified boundaries without cruelty. He stood, breathing deeply, resolve settling into him. This journey, this part of it, was not about romance. It was about responsibility. Naruto Uzumaki had once carried the weight of a world. Now he carried something quieter, but just as important. The weight of hearts that trusted him. And he would not run from that. Naruto Uzumaki finally understood that silence was no longer neutral. For a long time, he had believed that saying nothing was a way to protect others, to avoid misunderstanding, to prevent pain, to keep bonds intact. But silence, he now realized, did not pause emotions. It shaped them. It allowed people to imagine futures that had never been promised and to carry questions that were never answered. That realization did not frighten him. It grounded him. He looked back at the paths that had quietly formed around him. Hinata's presence had been steady, patient, unwavering. She never demanded answers, never rushed him, never asked him to be more than he was. Her trust had not been loud. It had simply been there. Constant, calm, and honest. Sakura's bond with him was built on shared growth and unbreakable trust. What they had did not need romance to be meaningful. It was strong because it was clear, complete, and free of illusion. Temari's respect was sharp and equal. She saw him not as a symbol or a savior, but as a man who understood restraint and responsibility. With her, there was no confusion, only truth. Ino's awareness had forced him to confront the impact of his presence. She reminded him that understanding without boundaries could still create attachment, and that emotional responsibility mattered as much as intention. None of these connections were mistakes. None of them was something he wished to undo. Naruto accepted a truth that marked the end of this chapter. Multiple love stories had begun not because he promised anything, but because he stayed, listened, and grew into someone emotionally safe. His journey had shaped hearts the same way it had once shaped battlefields. But being emotionally safe did not mean being emotionally silent. And Naruto would not let silence become avoidance. Standing beneath the open sky, Naruto took a slow, steady breath. He did not choose a future yet. He did not make declarations. He did not rush toward resolution. But he made one decision that mattered more than any other. He chose honesty. Soon, he would speak. Not to claim hearts, but to respect them. Not to decide everything, but to stop letting uncertainty do harm. Not to end connections, but to give them truth. Naruto Uzumaki had completed many journeys in his life. This one did not end with victory or defeat. It ended with readiness. Readiness to speak. Readiness to act with clarity. Readiness to face emotion with the same courage he once faced war. Thank you.